Testing, testing.
But we're here.
Hey, everybody.
Let's see, making sure the cart works first.
Yes, thank you for cart. And thank you, Stacy, for organizing the cart.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
So just to tell folks that are here on time, which is rare, we know, is there something weird happening where, like, if we look at each other, it's backwards. It's not, oh, there's a heart. Thank you, somebody's watching. We're having some technical confusion. Can you close it? Thank you. Bye. So if it seems like we're being weird with computers, because we are. And welcome to Crit Bits, conversation on things that are relevant to all of us, which is our bodies and the state of our bodies and the state of the world, which is hopefully going to be a fun and not super sad, but super motivating and exciting conversation that we'll be having monthly, that Sins and Val will be having monthly. And just want to acknowledge Stacy Milburn doing awesome tech support. Thank you, thank you. And Mordecai Ettinger, who is amazing. He is been a friend for 20 years and has started the, can you remind me of the name?
Health Justice Commons.
Health Justice Commons, thank you. And I have to just say, as evidenced by my blanking out, I feel like shit right now. I have a flu, a stomach flu specifically. So if I'm seeming weird, it's because I am. Not just the technology is weird, but I don't feel good. But I know that Mordecai and Stacy will forgive me, and hopefully you guys will too. And if you don't, then you can turn the camera off. And I wanted to speak with Mordecai for the first time, that we do this monthly series for multiple reasons. One, oh, if you guys are hearing something, we forgot an introduction.
Yeah, I'd like to read our bios.
Oh,
Your bios, is that okay?
oh,
Sure. So people know who you are.
that's exciting. Can we also, I heard noises. That noise was not Mordecai's stomach or mine. Can you hold up our other person on the...
It's Aristotle, our really good friend and disability justice advocate.
Oh my God, he's so cute on camera. He needs his own little spot. Oh my God. We can have another one with Amina here too.
So we're here to talk today about how we can heal our communities and how to do this healing work without relying on ableism. We will be talking about the intersections and the tensions, and both Patty and Mordecai have been doing this work for decades, so it's a really exciting conversation. Patty Byrne is a co-founder, executive director, and artistic director of Sins Invalid, a disability justice-based performance project centralizing disabled artists of color and queer and gender non-conforming artists with disabilities. Patty's training in clinical psychology focused on trauma and healing for survivors of interpersonal and state violence. Her professional background includes offering mental health support to survivors of violence and advocating for LGBTQI and disability perspectives within the field of reproductive genetic technologies. Patty's experience as a Japanese Haitian queer disabled woman provides grounding for her work creating liberated zones for marginalized voices. She is widely recognized for her work to establish the framework and practice of disability justice. Yay, Patty!
Woo!
Mordecai Ettinger is the author of the forthcoming book, We All Hold Up the Sky, Lessons in Health Justice for the 21st Century. He has over 20 years experience as a social justice activist and organizer, radical scholar and educator, and integrative healer. He serves as adjunct faculty at California Institute of Integral Studies, where he teaches critical studies medicine, and technology studies. His academic research focuses on the neurobiology of the social nervous system and its implications with regards to trauma, historical trauma, healing, and collective liberation. He is the founding director of the Health Justice Commons.
Woo,
Go
Mordecai!
So we have some questions
Oh,
that
and your bio?
Yeah, your bio. Would you like me to read it or do you want to
I'd
read
love
it?
to read. What?
And I'm with Sins Invalid too. I'm on the program team
Oh my word.
and in the Bay Area. Hi. So we only have 30 minutes, so I want us to be able to get to the questions. And for anyone who needs it, if you follow the live captioning link, then there is real-time captioning available. So that's the link above. So can we? Oh, go ahead.
Can we just acknowledge hi to everyone that we know? And
thank you
hi.
so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you, thank you. It's
We're
really nice.
Excited and grateful you're here.
And it's also great for people that we don't know. Hi, thank
Hi.
you for.
We're glad to meet you.
Yes, spending your afternoons with us. And I also want to just thank Mordecai for participating in this because I really do think there are overlaps and tensions with healing justice. They're both expanding frameworks, and this is an opportunity to get in more alignment with healing justice. And yeah, I think it's a great place to start that process. So thank you, Mordecai.
Thank you, Mordecai.
Thank you both. I'm really grateful and honored to be here.
So Mordecai, can you tell us what is healing justice?
Well, I think that like many frameworks or concepts that we organize around, it means different things to different people. But I think fundamentally, from my perspective, what it means is liberating our ideas of health and healing from what we've been kind of conditioned to believe and experience through systematic oppression and the accumulation of historical trauma and a lot of unredressed injustice. So we can actually stake a claim to understand and experience health and healing from the perspective of our own autonomy and self-determination. So, and I think it addresses what it means to feel good and free and alive in our bodies, within our communities, and what it means to have institutions that kind of reflect that that freedom, that autonomy, and the affirmation of the wholeness of our humanity and the wholeness of who we are and what we can become. And that is a very far cry from the healthcare that we have available to us right now, particularly given the fact that it's even been more and more under siege, so to speak, since this neo-fascist regime seized power, for lack of better terms. But I think simultaneously we're seeing a lot of the contradictions in healthcare that really have been accumulating since the settler colonialist period and the period of slavery and emancipation, where a lot of the knowledge that's been accumulated in medical science disciplines was accumulated during those times. So we're seeing, I think, community-based efforts led by traditional and ancestral healers like curanderas and all different types of non quote unquote Western healers kind of lead the charge to have community-based healing.
So that was Mordecai telling us about what healing justice means, a very introduction level. Patty, do you want to tell us what disability justice means to you or means?
Yes, I'm also just aware that there is a comment that we might want to address, or that you might want to address, Stacy.
Yeah, I saw that one person says there's an audio delay. Is that the case for anyone else?
And it might help
if we enunciate more.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And it might help if people also have the captioning stream open as well. because that might, unfortunately, it's not on the screen literally. But as we're progressing in these monthly talks, we might have a different setup in terms of the way we are positioned and also the way the captioning happens. We shall see. I have to say hello to my sister Mary. Hi. And so what is disability justice to me? Or, I think it's disability justice is a framework and a practice. I think that disability justice is an understanding that all bodies are whole and valuable, and that we are always who we are, whether or not we experience ourselves as always integrated. We are not just brains attending a meeting or bodies that are populating a movement or a community, but we are whole people, and we don't have to distance ourselves from our disabilities to engage in movement building or to engage in living our lives. It's not, so for example, a very concrete example is that we, within capitalism, we're taught to pretend that we're always, well or healthy. And that's just not the reality of life. That's just not. Like, if I'm feeling kind of, it's okay to say that and I don't have to judge myself. And, people that are in bodies, which I assume everyone that's on Facebook Live with us now or later is also in a body. And, it's okay. Like, it's okay. We can actually be honest about how and who we are. This is a natural part of being human. Disability is a natural part of life, a natural part of existing on the planet, just like aging, just like, giving birth, being in pain. It's all part of what it means to be in a body. And similarly, it's also part of, the reality of our species is that, we're the majority people of color, and we need to acknowledge that we are majority people of color on the globe, and the work for building justice has to be led by people of color, and it has to be led by those of us that are most marginalized, because we really do deeply understand systems of oppression and what things are in fact unjust and on institutional levels, and what things are need to be, what power needs to be shifted in interpersonal realms and even within ourselves. I think that for me, disability justice has meant like decolonizing myself, not just around my disability, not just beginning to love my body, and then not just like being able to quote tolerate my body, but actually dig it. I mean, I can actually say at this point, like, my body's pretty juicy and I'm pretty happy with it. And I think that it's, sure, that's part of disability justice, but the same kind of romancing, so to speak, or loving of all of ourselves and acceptance of all of ourselves is also part of disability justice. And from that place, from that center of self-acceptance and acknowledging the power, again, not just tolerance of, but the power of embracing our disabilities, and the power of embracing our genders, and the power of embracing, our heritages, and however we want to understand that, our lineage, are the shoulders that we stand on. I mean, that is what gives us strength individually and also collectively. And from, again, that standpoint, that we can, once we basically embrace our power, we're able to more effectively change social and political relationships, and ultimately economic relationships. And I'd say it's a way of, it's a framework, but it's also a practice, because we live in times that are, as Mordecai, I think so rightly identified, in a time of intense, settler colonial, fascist leaning, capitalist monopolization. and I mean, it's not like this just happened. I mean, obviously it's been happening for 500 plus years, and at the same time there's intensification right now, which is led to the climate change that is actually a threat to 90% of all species. Or was it 90 or 99? Either way, it's not good. And so, if we can understand that the health of our bodies and when I say bodies, I mean our psychic bodies as well as our physical bodies are related to the wellness of the land, and the abilities of our communities to thrive. I think the better chance we have of not just sustaining ourselves as individuals, but our communities and ultimately the planet. How can we exist without the planet? We can't.
So we're here today talking about the connecting points between disability justice and healing justice. We're going to open it up to questions soon, but before we do, I'm curious if you all have any thoughts around question of what does disability justice and healing justice uniquely bring to an intersectional lens for collective liberation?
Do you want to speak first or something? Well, I mean, I'm sure people have, well, maybe not, but there are different, what we've talked about is 10 principles of disability justice. And some of those are, the same as other social justice movements, right? Like that were led by those most impacted, for example. I mean, we say that with the inclusion of people with disabilities, and other movements may say that, but not necessarily understand that, that people with disabilities exist in their communities as a political identity and as a lived experience, but not just as a tragic, experience or condition for someone. But there are many of the principles of disability justice are similar to other movements. However, there are 3 that I think are really specific to disability justice, and one of them is a commitment to cross-disability organizing, that we move together. And this isn't very easy to unpack, especially in a couple minutes. But I think that, for example, when we are grieving because of a loss, and we're moving more slowly, and many of us have a lot of losses recently. When we're moving more slowly, that means we slow the work down. That means that we, make space for that grieving. That's not something that we say, okay, go in the other room and handle your business and process your stuff yourself. It means that we, move at the pace where we can all comfortably move. And even if that looks like we're not moving very much, I can guarantee you that isometric movement is also movement. So I think the idea that we move together and that we move where we are committed to ensuring that regardless of someone's body, mind, space, that no one is kind of shunted to the side. In a social justice setting, is pretty novel, and I'm really grateful for that. And it does dictate a speed that is organic, right, and not predetermined. But I'm like, that's life, man.
Can you clarify what isometric movement is?
Oh yeah, isometric movement is like, so my hand. I don't know if you can. God, this camera's weird. Okay, yeah, like that. Okay, so here's my fingers, and like right now, I'm stretching my arm up. Oh, you can't see my fingers. Trust me, my fingers are there. Okay, and I'm stretching my arm up and all my muscles are moving, but just because you can't see it doesn't mean the muscles aren't moving. And that movement, that infinitesimal movement, that carries so much like energy and currents of electrical, neurological push, and all of the blood flow and lymph flow. It's happening, right? It's happening whether or not it's visible. We're cooking, right? Sometimes bread is rising, and we're not seeing it. It's slow. That doesn't mean it's not rising. It just means that's the process. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. Did you want to answer more?
Did you want to say any other things about the principles for disability justice?
Well, I could go on a lot, and so maybe we could talk about them at a different time. I'm just aware that it's 6:22, and we wanted to answer questions.
Mordecai, can you take that question, and then we can take some audience questions?
I think for me in this moment, one of the most important things about a healing justice or health justice framework is helping our communities understand the kind of medical institutions that we have access to are really part of other oppressive systems and institutions. So it's kind of an institutional continuum. And Liat Ben Moshe, who's a friend of Sins Invalid, talks about this in her work and research all the time. So, the way that we receive our medical care right now is really through the medical industrial complex, which is a hop, skip, and a jump away from the prison industrial complex and the military industrial complex and all these other interconnected institutions and sets of practices. And we have this sense, well, to some extent, because many of us have had such horrible experiences with the medical establishment, it's really akin to torture, but still, I think in our collective imagination, we have this idea that going into a doctor's office, and this isn't to criticize individual doctors or nurses, because we know a lot of amazing revolutionary doctors and nurses, but as institutions, we have this myth that it's a benign, kind of neutrally charged in terms of power situation that we're going into, but really medical institutions historically and currently are really about power and social control. So the extent to which we can really kind of liberate healthcare, get a sense of embodied wellness that we define on our own and with our communities in a way of interdependence, and interdependence is another important piece of disability justice principles, I think is just really crucial right now. And I think galvanizing resources for our communities for health and wellness and doing basic health education so we can take care of ourselves now, but in crisis as well, that those things are really important. So I think when Patty mentioned that, disability justice really has a lot to contribute around the practices of how we are with ourselves and each other, I think health justice, healing justice does as well. And I think a big piece of it too is, moving at the real pace of bodies as opposed to the pace that capitalism is trying to push us, like Patty indicated, and just holding ourselves and each other, which much more compassion and tenderness than our kind of society pushes us into. And that's pretty basic, but it's also really essential.
Right? I mean, it's amazing how many of the principles I think that we're talking about, have been, are just about how we live with integrity with ourselves. And somehow that has gotten lost in, well, not somehow, but, capitalist kind of ethics of pushed capitalist culture pushes our bodies and communities into really uncomfortable, unsustainable expectations And so we find ourselves either pushed out of social bodies, or kind of punished and for just being human, and trying to hide our actual humanity, which is that we move as we move. I do see a comment. I think it's
yeah, the one from Olivia.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Olivia who's asking, speaking of healing justice, how can we expand our knowledge base on health from other cultures without pushing spirituality on people?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a spiritual person. I don't believe in a soul, and it is triggering for me as a survivor of religious trauma to hear people suggest that spirituality is necessary for me to be a good person or culturally connected as a Latinx person. I think it's also important to acknowledge the predatory nature of a lot of alternative medicine, in addition to drug and insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And the supplement industry, despite the appropriation of progressive language. Mm-hmm.
Can I speak to that a little bit? Mm-hmm. I really appreciate you bringing that up, because we are in a capitalist context, and so there's no way that we can engage without acknowledging that is the way that most / all business models and industries are going to be attempting to engage with individuals and communities. And I'm speaking to your last point, Olivia, about the predatory nature of alternative medicine. Certainly not all practitioners, and I would even say not all fields. However, it's true that people. I mean, I'm experiencing this right now. A family member has a psych impairment, and we're trying to look at alternatives for to the drugs that they're demanding that she take as an inpatient. We're looking at alternatives that are $1,300 for a 1 hour consultation, a 2 hour consultation. It's absurd, and it does feel predatory. That's exactly, that language really resonates with me. And I mean, I also don't feel like I'm well enough educated to just come up with a supplement plan or a dietary plan or an herbal plan on my own, which is why I feel like community resources and engaging with people that we do trust are key, because at a certain point in scale, right, whether or not it's alternative healing or standard allopathic, whatever healing, like Western medicine, it's still an industry, and industries are there to make money. That's just speaking to your last point.
So we have a few people really echoing the need to make space for slowness, and the medical establishment being about control. We have time for a few questions if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask. Maybe while we're... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, the other part of the question that I heard was about how we can engage with healing practices without having to incorporate spiritual, like insisting on a spiritual framework simultaneously, because I think it is true that a lot of healing frameworks, either some, I think, where people really are kind of imbued with what I call like a framework of love, and some that are a framework of like creating a small empire of I don't even know, like a cult of personality, and so I think it's a great question. Do I have an answer? No, not really. I mean, trying to use our best discretion, I think, has been, important tool for survival for all of us individually. Yeah, Mordecai, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think on that point, Olivia, I think all of your questions are really poignant and powerful and so important right now. I think from my perspective, if there's anything that feels coercive or forceful about a healing or health experience, then it's not healthy or healing. I mean, I think one of the necessary ingredients for health and healing is non-coercion. So it's like if someone's working with you, or you're in a context where something's feeling forced on you, that it doesn't seem like it's the right fit for you. And I think, from my perspective, what's really important is for when we're on these kinds of paths to wellness and healing and wholeness, to orient to what feels authentic and uplifting to us. So if justice is a vision of justice in the world that you're, working towards, is something that you can orient to, that will give you hope, that will give you energy, a sense of expansiveness, then when people are talking about spirit, you can subtract that, or substitute that, or if it's the natural world, or if it's connecting with your ancestors in some way, whatever really feels meaningful and true for you. And then I just support you and invite you to connect with others who resonate with that truth, so you can really feel held in community and witness, because you deserve that, and that's what we really all need right now.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So this question is from Claire. Hi, Claire. TV shows called Doctors. What'd you say?
I said, hey, to your little icon, sorry.
TV shows called doctors, especially in hospitals, healers. What would be a more accurate word for doctors in the system? And what would a true healer look like?
I mean, wouldn't it make sense to call doctors doctors? Because that's their framework. I mean, that'd be almost like calling a pharmacologist a healer. And maybe an individual pharmacologist, has I'm just thinking of all the medical experiences that I've witnessed and participated in, and medical meaning allopathic medicine, and they're certainly helpful, some of them, and some of them are not. Gatekeepers might be a nice word.
Curers.
Yeah, exactly.
Toward, curing. It's more looking at a list of symptoms and then trying to remove the symptoms, as to trying to address the root causes. Often the root causes are about the world in which we live, not what's happening in a single person's body. And that's, I think, one of the biggest limitations of allopathic medicine. And, like we talked about a moment ago, a lot of the kind of institutions that are entangled with the medical industrial complex and perpetuating it and kind of like feeding the profit base is what's causing the problems that a lot of people, develop illness as a consequence. So, a lot of people are coming, you come in, you have a cough or something like that. Well, you live in a neighborhood where the air quality is very poor. Or we live in a neighborhood where our air quality is very poor, or the water quality is poor, and we have a constant low-grade cold or things like that, or there's such an increase in asthma in our young people in our communities and neighborhoods. So there's nothing really, yes, there's physical symptoms that are manifesting in a single person's body, but it's about our political moment and environmental racism oftentimes in a case like that. So in that way, I don't know, doctors are delusional. They're certainly delusional about, it's not in their model to see the full picture of causality.
And I don't I mean, I say gatekeeper for a reason. I do think that, like, doctors have a, you know, cure or kill framework oftentimes, but at least for people with like kind of static physical conditions / disabilities. And I think that in order to access medication that we want or need, or in order to access durable medical equipment, or in order to access, you know, time to sleep because our hearts hurt from a loss, like those literally require doctors to sign off on, right? Like, I know I need a toilet. I don't need a doctor to prescribe me a toilet. I mean, I shouldn't need a doctor to prescribe my toilet, but somehow I can't get one to the insurance company unless the doctor says I need a toilet. Like, what is this? It's bullshit, basically. And, you know, so I think the gatekeeping function of doctors is one of their key roles, because they, and as you said, Mordecai, you know, they look at a list of symptoms, and then, you know, what even they determine as a symptom is, you know, within their model, right? Like, it might not be, there might be a thousand things that are going on which are more indicative, but you know, even the symptoms are kind of skewed, or what is considered a symptom.
I think increasingly treatment protocols are
Right.
being determined by
By
the
insurance
industry,
company, of course, and
which is absurd. Those are non-medical professionals making those decisions to satisfy a bottom line, essentially.
Right. I mean, in so offensive ways, in terms of, you know, who's seen as likely to live, you know, it is horrifying.
Yeah, they're literally white collar gamblers.
Gambling with
against
our lives.
Liability, yeah. Probabilities of.
But I guess one thing I wanted to say, though, also, I want to change the format where we have an hour.
Yeah, we can keep going. We have captioning it for until 7.
Okay, maybe we can go for a little longer. And if people need to do their business, don't feel obligated, you know. But, and I think all these comments will be saved and whatnot, so don't feel like you have to scroll rapidly and read everything. But I just want to respond to something that you said, Mordecai. I mean, regardless of the environment, I think that some of us would just have bodies that function differently than other people, you know, and that's okay. Like, I would imagine that, you know, for lots of people, I'm thinking, for example, of, you know, friends that have polio or post-polio syndrome or cerebral palsy, or, you know, myself, like, just with my impairment, like, probably just as shit that happens, you know, like when you give birth, sometimes a cord's going to get wrapped around the throat and someone's not going to have oxygen. Like, that just happens, right? Like, and it's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, what creates, again, the disablement happens when someone is treated as less than because of that, you know, whatever difference, or I don't want to make it such a big deal as a difference, but what's unique to that person that's, you know, somehow non-normative, is when that person is treated, you know, as they're less than. There's less access to, you know, community, less access to education, less access to jobs. I mean, disability oppression comes in. I mean, that's what describes, you know, disablement. And, you know, there's always going to be people with disabilities. There are people with disabilities before there's capitalism. There's going to be people with disabilities after capitalism, because bodies are fine, man. They really are. Like, they're juicy. They break down. I mean, juice is good, but, like, not always, you know. And, like, some things we want, you know, a different way. And that's just life. And it's not, so again, I would really say, I think I have said before, it's not convenient to live in a body. Like, it's just not, it can be very complicated, you know? Just like when you see an infant trying to walk, they're going to fall down like 10,000 times before they get it to being stable, if they ever get to being stable. And that's just a process, right? It's okay. You're not like, oh, you're walking fucked up. They're just trying to live and figure out how to balance and whatever. And so for my body, like, it's just, things don't connect the way somebody else's bodies may connect. And, you know, it's probably never. And that's the way it is. It means I take hours and hours to get up. But that just means that, like, you know, my workday is going to be less, you know, and it's taken a long time to, like, appreciate the slowness of that. So, you know, many times I'm like, why can't this just be faster or easier? And then I'm like, oh, because I'm in this body, that's why. And this body, like, I, as this body, like, have needs that take time. And when I want to take a break from that, I can, like, take a quick 5-minute nap from my routine and then go back to it. Or I can choose to just not do that and, you know, pretend like I don't have the needs I do, and then fuck myself up really badly in 2 weeks, you know? So, like, we can make our choices individually about how we want to negotiate our needs. And for people that don't have complex needs at any moment, like, you know, just learn, because you're going to have complex needs at some point. My brain used to be ridiculously fast. And as I've had to be on medication for pain, and now that I'm 50, it's different. It's really different. Ask anybody 50 if their brains work the same way as when they were 25. It doesn't. But, you know, I'm brilliant. It's just in a different way. Like, it's not like remembering. It's not about facts. It's more about synthesis now. Whereas when I was younger, facts were at my disposal, you know? Now synthesis of information is very easy for me. But fuck all if I can remember what I ate yesterday. Especially when I have a tummy like I do now. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling.
So we have some questions. And this is from Elizabeth and relates to the last one a little bit. Wondering how drawing on both disability justice and healing justice makes it possible to more effectively minimize trauma from ableism, ableist people / institutions.
Can you repeat that? I was looking at the emojis.
I know. I like seeing the happy ones.
I know.
Wondering how drawing on both disability justice and healing justice makes it possible to more effectively minimize trauma from ableism / ableist people / ableist institutions.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I think you just named it there. You and Mordecai, I'm talking a lot.
Appreciate it.
Put me down.
Well, I think Sins Invalid has an amazing access checklist that can be shared. So for people who are doing community work, movement work, you can look at this access checklist, and you can reflect on it with the people that you're organizing with, and then figure out a plan to implement it at your events. So you can make sure to really be on point in terms of disability justice solidarity. Patty mentioned the 10 points of disability justice that was generated by herself and Stacy and other beautiful, amazing people that are part of Sins Invalid, and the Disability Justice Primer is an amazing resource. I think it's both an amazing resource for those of us that experience ableism, to kind of be able to heal and build resilience from that, and clear the internalized ableism, and then like figure out concrete ways to take action in our lives and in community. And then I think there's just like simple practices of like listening deeply to each other when we talk about our needs, and holding that space for witness, being validating and just asking, you know, working with other people to kind of problem solve to meet needs that might not have been anticipated. Those of us that we deal with disabilities or we deal with chronic illness, we often wake up encountering problems we didn't anticipate with our bodies when we went to bed the night before. And that might impact how or if we're able to work the next day, and it might impact how we're able to move our bodies in space and time or go to the next meeting or be able to eat. I mean, there's so many things. So being able to have open dialogues, just making that a part of the way that we interact with each other without shame is huge. And again, to do it with gentleness, to do it in a way where we're honoring each other's wholeness and dignity, and holding a space for the dignity of that vulnerability, you know, I think is so important. And, you know, these are a lot, there's, you know, this is such a big part of what it means to be a whole person. And it's almost like disability justice and healing justice can teach us so much about what it means to be whole in these times, and the way that wholeness has been, you know, pretty persistently corroded by white supremacy and male supremacy and ableism and all the other things that uphold and perpetuate 21st century settler colonialist capitalism. It is not good times. But at the same time, we're all here together, and that's pretty amazing. I'm even feeling grateful for Facebook. So you never know where like these little moments of beauty and power and resilience are going to come through.
I'm just thinking about what you said, and really it's about systems that are demanding us to enact violence upon ourselves, that are demanding us to, you know, enact violence on our bodies and on our, you know, our entirety, you know, and like the expectation that our bodies are there just as a component of a production process. You know, I mean, if people can think back to if they've ever taken an economics class, right? The word for human is labor, right? As a unit of labor. And how insulting is that? I mean, you know, and that's why we talk about our bodies being inherently anti-capitalist when we have disabilities. You know, I mean, because we actually can't extract labor in the same way from a non-conforming body that you would extract it from a body that's more normative. But really, should labor be extracted? Right, like
absolutely not. That is not why we're here.
Right, and it's absurd. Like, who is actually comfortable? You know, and we've talked about this in other settings, in Sins Invalid. Like sometimes, you know, we're really pumped on something, and we want to work for like, you know, 12 hours straight because it's like super enticing, and you know, it's what's happening at the moment, you know. Just like sometimes we want to eat, we're going to sit at a table and eat for like 2 or 3 hours, or, you know, have sex for, you know, 2 or 3 hours or whatever. But then there are times that, you know, within capitalism, like, or within reality, we don't feel like we're able to work more than an hour or two, if at all. You know, I mean, that's the ebb and flow of, you know, an energetic system. It's you know, there's going to be a greater flow and a lesser flow. I mean, that's just what happens. And to deny that, you know, and to, I mean, it just makes me think of like so many futuristic, you know, painful narratives, you know, like that you see on TV or whatever, where, you know, humans are allotted a certain amount of television that they're forced to watch, and a certain amount of food that they must eat, and a certain amount of products they must consume. You know, like, we're not units of consumption and labor people.
So there's a really interesting conversation going on in the comments, and I'm wondering if you all can speak to it, talking about a mind-body split. Are we inhabiting bodies or being bodies? Just essential disabledness, illness. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I have a lot of
Do you want to go ahead?
So as a person that has experienced, I mean, I've had this body which moves radically different from other people's bodies. I've never walked. I've been a chair user since I was out of a stroller, etc. As someone that's experienced a lot of ableism, I didn't identify with my body for a long time. And I think my senses, a lot of people with physical impairments don't identify with their bodies within ableism. And for me, a big part of decolonizing myself has been recognizing that, like, I am my body, just like I am all of myself. It's not like I can be like, well, my brain over there, or my tongue over there, or my thoughts over there. I mean, this is all of me. I think for convenience sake, when I'm talking with people and I'm saying, can you help me move my left leg? I'm gonna not say like just me, because then I don't know what part. But I personally, it's not the left leg, it's my left leg, it's me. So for me personally, it's been an integration of myself, and I think that Disability Justice frameworks ask us to, I think supports us to move toward an integration of ourselves, that we don't have to split from one part of ourselves, unless that's what someone needs to live, in which case that's okay too. For me, I wanted to identify with my body, because I appreciate it.
Mordecai, did you have thoughts, or we could go on to the next question?
Well, this is something, I don't think.
Steel and associated with like feminist, etc.
It says it's frozen.
Does that mean that people can't hear us either?
One person said, "Is there an audio issue?" That's a captioner. And then video just went out, trying to reconnect. Anyone else having this? Oh, good, we're back.
Okay.
Are we back? Can one more person? Okay, good, we're back.
Okay,
thank you. I also want to acknowledge that we don't want to abuse the audio describer's time in it. I do kind of want to do a checkout, close out.
Yeah.
So after Mordecai, you finish, then we can move toward there. So
that sounds great.
So I think that it's so important right now. I think it's like a revolutionary act for us to be able to honor the wisdom, the wisdom for the lived experience of being in our bodies. If we're living with illness, if we're living with disability, because it gives us a lot of information about what's working and what's not working in the society, and really it gives us a deeply felt sense of what's just and what's not just. Our body really knows. You can't really pull one over on your body. You really can't.
I like that.
If like there's a part of you, if your gut is telling you no, then that means no. And in fact, we have this saying, "Oh, I just kind of like felt it in my gut. I didn't feel comfortable in that place." Well, now in fact we know that there's a branch of the parasympathetic nervous system that's called the enteric nervous system that actually innervates our gut, and it moves more quickly than the other branches of our autonomic nervous system to bring information to our brain and to the sensory afferents, that's like to our arms and legs. So, if you have that feeling, that felt sense in your body, it means something, and it's wisdom that deserves to be honored and listened to. And, as Patty was talking about, the limitations of our bodies need to be honored and listened to. And there's just a lot of important information about what a liberated society looks like when we kind of honor that wisdom and we re-centralize what it means to be in these bodies.
So You're awesome. I was also thinking about the recent, research on the vagus nerve, and
I just went to a conference on that this past weekend with with the founder of the theory, Stephen Porges.
I'm excited to read some of that because I think that could, and it's funny because these are almost like, after the fact explanations, or I don't want to say rationalizations, but they're after the fact explanations, almost like, we just discovered, this continent. And it's like, well, this continent was here.
It's been here long time.
Yeah.
Pretty close to always.
Yeah. And, well, there may be different advances in, medical sciences around how our bodies function. They really are kind of, they're after the fact, they're not quite rationalizations, but, we can actually just listen directly to if we're in pain, or, what works for us. I mean, we are legitimate sources of knowledge ourselves, and that doesn't need verification, by anyone else. And I do want to wrap up and just honestly say how grateful I am that everyone is here, that is here or that will be listening, because this is partly how we form community. And this is partly how we share our understandings, which is why the questions are really important. And it's really made me think a lot. And also, Mordecai, thank you so much for like thinking, and I think for me this is like playing, like it's a way to play together. It's fun, and there's no like stakes. We don't have to be right. We don't have to do it, but just play. Like, this is good. And I also just want to acknowledge that we're working on our technology. So next month we may be, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe really far back from the camera, because right now we're all clustered up around it and we can't see each other. And I don't like that. Okay, we can't even, yeah.
So there's a lot of thank yous.
Oh.
And we want to give folks a minute if you have any suggestions around what you'd like us to talk about next month. We're open to ideas, and can think about questions and speakers for those ideas. So,
and if people want to hear Stacy Milburn talk and not just moderate, you should say that, because I think she would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And maybe next time Mordecai could moderate and me and Stacy could talk, or I could moderate and they could talk, or something. Oh God, yeah. It's 7:00.
Yeah, I think you have 30 seconds.
Okay.
If people are interested in taking a 4-week class on the neurobiology of the social nervous system, then you can PM me and you can get some information. It starts next month.
And hopefully we'll see everybody on Monday's Twitter chat between Disability Visibility Project and San Francisco Women Against Rape and Sins and Violence.
Yeah.
And the hashtag that is Disabled Resilient.
Yes, hashtag Disabled Resilient.
So Monday, 4 o'clock on Twitter, Disabled Resilient.
Yay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Patty.
So
Thank you.
Mordecai.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you,
Thank you.
Patty.
Bye.
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 Mordecai, can you click that red button?